Welcome to Room for All, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of inclusive employment and explore the power of creating opportunities for people with disabilities. I'm Andrea Comastri, CEO and co-founder of Hotel Etico, Australia's first not-for-profit social enterprise hotel.
And I am Saraya O'Connell, General Manager of Hotel Etico. Together, we'll be your hosts as we talk about the importance of breaking down barriers in the workplace. We will have a particular focus on hospitality and other customer-facing roles, and how businesses can lead the charge toward inclusion.
At Hotel Etico, we believe that everyone deserves the fair chance to succeed. And we've made it our mission to not only provide jobs, but to build meaningful careers for people with disabilities. On this podcast, we will be sharing success stories, best practice, and inspiring conversations with industry leaders from the hospitality sector, the disability sector, other social enterprises, philanthropy, and of course, our own trainees, graduates, and staff.
Whether you're a business owner, an advocate for inclusion, or someone curious about the future of work, this podcast is for you.
So come and join us at Hotel Etico, or as we call it, the Hotel California for the Heart, a place where once you have checked in, your heart will never leave.
So let's get started and open the doors for all.
And
yeah, you're good.
And we're rolling. Okay, welcome to the very first episode, official number 1 of Room for All.
First episode with a number.
That's right. I'm here with my co-host, Saraya O'Connell.
Hi.
How are you,
Hi,
Saraya?
everyone.
And we have our very first official guest, in person, virtually. Our very own Traceylee Arestides. How are you, Traceylee?
Very well, Andrea. Lovely to see you and Saraya both.
Very, very good to have you. We're very excited because we started this journey not long ago, and we've decided to take it head on and see where it takes us.
It's been a journey already.
That's right. So
as everything we do tends to be.
So yes, we
wanted you to be our first guest because we think it's important we've spoken about Hotel Etico in episode 0, but we think it's important to come from your perspective and what you do on board as co-chair, and we're probably going to leave it to you to introduce yourself a little bit.
Yes, and we're just going to let it unravel. And unpack. So tell us a little bit about who is Traceylee Arestides?
Okay. Gosh, who is Traceylee Arestides?
It's a tough question.
I know. Thanks for starting with the easy ones, guys.
Yeah.
Look, for the purposes of this, I'm possibly primarily the mother of Francesca, my eldest daughter, only because when Franny was born 32 years ago, she was our first baby, and unbeknownst to us, she had trisomy 21, Down syndrome, and quite complex medical conditions as well. I'd never met anyone with Down syndrome when Franny was born, and we had no clue, none whatsoever, and any inklings we had were not very positive at all. I'd come from a corporate background. I'd worked in marketing and PR, in fashion and beauty and film, and then moved over to doing PR comms generally in the not-for-profit sector about 3 years before Franny was born. And nothing had prepared either Franny's father or myself for her being born. Because she was our first baby, it was really good because we had
no longer behind.
In a way, it was good that Franny was our first baby because we had no expectations of what babies should do anyway. So that Franny being born sort of flicked us into the parallel universe of disability, but more specifically intellectual disability, and also flicked us into a fairly amazing community of people as well, which has been wonderful.
How old is Franny?
She's 32 now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's just about to move out of home, which we were planning for her to move out of home 3 or 4 years ago, but then COVID happened, so that didn't happen. She's got 2 younger sisters who are both out of home. So Franny's just preparing to move out of home, and she's also preparing to get married later this year.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm excited for that wedding.
it's going to be good fun.
It's going to be a big
Yeah.
event.
And tell us a little bit how you came to find out about Hotel Etico and what brought you into the picture.
Okay. Well, I said I've been working in the not-for-profit sector, not specifically disability, because I didn't necessarily want to live disability and work disability. And then I sort of fell into a job in disability in the tertiary education sector. And from there, I moved on to a couple of different jobs and ended up as the Executive Director of Down Syndrome New South Wales. And while I was there, I had a couple of years into the job, I had a phone call. You often get, random phone calls from people, but I had a phone call from a guy saying, an Italian guy saying he was here with his family having a holiday, and in Italy he runs a hotel which is staffed by people with Down syndrome and had been set up to train and employ people with Down syndrome to work in the hospitality industry. And would I be interested in having a cup of coffee? And of course I was. And that was Alex Taselli, who was here with his family. And Alex and I met, and he showed me all the stuff about Hotel Etico in Italy. And he took me through how they do things, which just blew me away because there was nothing in Australia like that. Nothing as holistic and person-centred. And this was 2015, so it was just as the NDIS, we hadn't had the full rollout of the NDIS yet. We were still only rolled out in a couple of areas, the Hunter being one, and I think one other in Melbourne and South Australia perhaps. So it was certainly before the full impact of the NDIS. And just the vision of it was fabulous. So in 2016, I went to Italy. Somebody's got to do it. And
Hard life too. I haven't yet.
You should most definitely. Anyway, I went up to Asti and spent some time with the hotel, who very graciously hosted me there for a couple of days, and also the hospitality college in the town that they had partnered with, and the restaurant that was part of Hotel Asti as well.
And what struck you? What made it different from anything that you had been aware of until that time?
Okay, so what made it different was, as I said, it was very holistic in nature, because it started off with people with Down syndrome, but it also went, the hotel in Italy had grown to embrace more generally people with intellectual disability as well. And what really impressed me tremendously was not only did they trained people with disability in hospitality, but in all aspects of hospitality. They rotated them through every business unit of the hotel. So they weren't just hidden away in the laundry folding towels. They were, front and centre.
Front and
centre. They were on reception. So they were front and centre. They were answering the phones. They were at the bar. They were doing housekeeping. They were also employed, not just in the hotel, but in other hotels. So it wasn't a closed-loop enterprise that just employed its own trainees. There was actually everything happened with the idea that there was a place in the world for these people, a place in the broader world. And the thing that I love as a parent, rather than just a worker in the sector, was they had this wonderful thing called the Academy of Independence, where people were training there, they actually lived in the academy with their peers. And it was like a big, messy group home that you live in your 20s, where you complain about your flatmate not having done the dishes, and you flirt with the girl in the next room. And it was just, and you're also responsible for doing your own laundry, your own shopping, all of those real life skills. And there was fragmented things in Australia, but nothing that addressed what is still a shocking issue in Australia around the unemployment of people with intellectual disabilities.
And interestingly, this was all painted in a beautiful, beautiful picture by an Australian movie director, right? Film
Yes, yeah,
director.
Trevor Graham, who's quite renowned internationally, actually, and most people would know Trevor from his documentary Marbo some years ago, which was really groundbreaking. Yeah,
And he did the story of Chef Antonio instead. Who is
Antonio's
Chef Antonio?
Recipes for Revolution, which is I always say it's like a
Tell us.
love story to northern Italy. It's a beautiful film.
And because Antonio is the chef that, together with Alex, started the entire movement in Italy,
Yeah,
right?
he is. Antonio and his brother have quite a famous restaurant in Asti called Takabanda, which is famous in foodie circles for its use of regional produce and traditional recipes. And
They've got the best wine, the best produce, truffles, right?
yes,
Everything that you want.
everything. It's
I'll take everything but the truffle.
Yeah, well, you miss out.
Antonio's a big character with a big vision, and it was Antonio originally that was contacted by some friends of his in the town. Asti's only a relatively small town. Was contacted by some friends who had a son with Down syndrome, Niccolo, who had done really well at school, but found once he left school that there was nothing for him to do. And so he started. Antonio had never met anyone with Down syndrome either. And so Niccolo started in the restaurant, and Antonio just, discovered that, surprise, surprise, he could work just as well as anybody else. He needed to learn things in a slightly different way. And by the time I was in Asti in 2015, Niccolo was the head waiter of this quite renowned restaurant, and he features quite heavily in Trevor Graham's film, Chef Antonio's Recipes for Revolution. And part of Chef Antonio's vision is that people with disability be brought out and have that interface with people, just general, ordinary people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful movie, beautiful story. And Trevor did a fantastic job. We have it available at the hotel. We use it a lot
We do.
as part of our induction
For all
process
staff.
for all
Yeah.
staff. It's what really gets people over the line if they still need to, in terms of buying into the project.
Yeah.
We also make it available for people to watch in streaming when they come. They get a code from us and they can watch it. It's a beautiful, beautiful story that we really highly recommend to people. But so you went to Italy, you witnessed that, you come back to us. Do you go with Franny or you went
No,
on your
I
own?
went on my own. I've actually got cousins in Italy, so I went to stay with my cousins. Not that I'm Italian, it's an accident, but I have Italian cousins.
Or Greeks, Italians, or you're not even Greek,
No, I'm
actually,
not
right?
even.
You come back to Australia. It's 2016, you said, and then what happens?
Then
Like what takes us to 2018, which is when the company was registered?
What happened then was Alex and I kept in touch, and we did more than keep in touch. Alex and I decided that what we needed to do was make friends for the project, to bring the project to Australia. So one of the first things we did was work with Professor Simon Darcy at the University of Technology, and the University Business School there very kindly hosted a day for us, which Alex came out for, to talk about exactly this, about employing people with disability, specifically in hospitality, and how it was happening in Italy and what the vision could be for Australia. And from there we looked at, so this was our strategy to make friends for the project. And of course, as soon as you say hotel in Northern Italy, everybody says, oh yes, I could be friends with that. But also to do a bit of a deeper dive into what was happening with people with intellectual disability, particularly in Australia and in employment. And at the same time, along that, working towards incorporation as a legal entity and a charitable entity. And then, of course, finding other people we could work with on the board and who were ready to jump on that journey with us. Looking at you, Andrea.
Someone that you had a little bit of little bit of experience in doing that.
Yes, exactly, and who was also experienced in that, as you are in that not-for-profit and philanthropic space.
So, Tracy, in the last episode, Andrea called me out for the way I came to Hotel Etico, as in forgetting my cover letter. So he just put my put it out there for everybody to listen. So is there anything he didn't do well that I could possibly use?
No, sorry.
Oh, come on. There's got to be something, like he didn't tie his shoes, he tripped over when you met him, he spilled coffee on himself.
So when we met,
No.
I was working for a foundation, the PAYCE
Mm.
Foundation. I was running the foundation for a property developer. And I think the approach came through common friends and
Yeah,
contacts that we had.
someone who was
See,
working with SEFA. Yeah.
that's and somehow, I mean, possibly in the back of your mind, you were hoping to find someone with some money to put on the table to set something up, I suppose. And I still remember the meeting that we had, and so as soon as you opened up about what the project was about, I said, "Stop."
Yes.
You know, I can tell you now that most likely we wouldn't be able to support you financially because that's not the space in which the PAYCE Foundation operates. But I love this model. I want to be involved. I want to be your man on the ground, and let's make it happen. So if we don't get money, at least you get me.
Yes.
I think
That
Is
was
that
a
a
pretty
trade-off?
good deal.
Pretty good deal?
Yeah. So I just dive right into it. And I had good connections at the time because I was working to set up our own structure at the foundation, actually. I had worked with a legal firm called ProLegis, which was a firm that was specializing in not-for-profits and charity registrations. And look at the cat peeking. And we got in touch with ProLegis, with Anne Robinson. And Anne referred us to one of her lawyers, who was Luke Hall. And I'm using these names because, like, very interesting sort of closing of loops and sort of somehow reconnecting people. Luke now works for Baker McKenzie, who is one of the corporate partners of Hotel Etico and supports us. And so Luke wrote our constitution and helped us register and incorporate. And so on the 18th of March 2018, the company was registered and became a charity.
We should call that Etico Day.
Yes,
should call
so
that Etico
there's a few critical days in the history of Hotel Etico, and I've been trying to sort of think of what is the best day. I think we can have a number of Etico days in a way, but definitely the formal registration of the company is the 18th of March 2018, which was at that time we didn't have any money.
No.
We had 3 friends.
The key to being able to access any money was being incorporated and registered.
Yes,
The
absolutely.
ACNC. So once that had happened, we knew that people loved the idea. We knew that
Yes.
people in the disability space could see the possibility and the passion behind the idea. Parents of young people with disability was, some of our biggest supporters initially, because when you're the parent of a child with a disability, when they leave school, it's like entering some sort of labyrinth that you have no idea whether you're going to turn the corner and hit a brick wall or find a golden pathway. So I think it really captured the combination of elements that make up Etico really captured the imagination.
Yes. And at the time, we all had day jobs. Alex was in Italy. You were working. I was working. We all had sort of,
there were a lot of late night
and
coffees.
that's right. And so we had no money, a few friends, a few connections, a great idea. And so we started. It was all so very random. Like I remember meeting a young lady. Her name was Linda. Is Linda. She was working at UTS at the time. She had been referred to me by Professor Bronwyn Dalton, who head of the business school.
Yeah.
And she was referred to me because I had done some work with Bronwyn, and she was looking for a mentor. And so she reached out to me. We have a coffee downstairs at Avenue at Chippy Tower.
I'm seeing a pattern.
Oh,
It's all
yeah,
coffee.
There's a lot of coffee in this story.
And I remember the day we sit down, and she showed me her CV, and she talks to me, and she says, "Well, I'm Italian. I have worked in disability. I have managed a hotel in Byron Bay, and I'm an accountant." Okay. I said, look, Linda, I can help you, but you need to help me because I've got something for you. And so then I think I spoke with you, spoke with Alex, and I said, guys, I think we've got someone here that could possibly help us. We need to find a formula
Yeah.
to make it work for us. And we asked Linda to do it, and Linda was very resourceful. And in fact, I think we should have her as a guest one day. She lives in Spain now, in Barcelona.
Can we go to Spain and do the podcast?
We could do that. Got other friends there as well, which is great.
Sweet.
So Will and Linda, and so we're sort of digressing, but Linda one night goes to a TFN event, the funding network, because she was the best networker. And at the TFN, she was doing the mingling and the networking that you do before the event. And she starts talking in Italian with a lady, an interesting lady that was there as a participant, as a donor. And this lady ends up to be Mrs. Salteri.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Salteri was there with her husband, and they were participating in the TFN and donating, fundraising, and she falls in love with the project. And from then, we have a meeting with Paul Salteri, and we discuss and we talk about it. And he decides that, I don't know if the Italian background helped. Maybe it helped a little bit. I think it could have helped a little bit. Decides to put a little bit of money on the table to help us. You know, he made us sweat for it, I think, which is the best way. And that allowed us to employ Linda. And Linda took us sort of a few steps further, and through her, we pretty much found the property, and the rest is history. So Linda was a critical initial person that did a huge amount of work, virtually for free, and it was all thanks to coffee.
Coffee. So fast forward, the two of you, question. Did you think, fast forward to 2024, did you think we would be where we're at now with 15 trainees, with 70% currently in employment while we're working on the others? Did you think that we would be there in 2024?
You go first.
Okay. I had no doubt. I didn't know. I couldn't have put a pin in the timeline, but I had no doubt that, having seen how people responded to the idea across all parts of, the whole spectrum, I had no doubt that the project would be successful, and that success looks like trainees, and it looks like jobs, and it looks like building and building and building that ripple outward effect of a wonderful community as well.
Yes.
And it looks like making changes to perceptions of, across the board as well. So I had no doubt about that at all. The timeline, I didn't know.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I think it was clear from the beginning to all of us that the model was a winner. It was the perfect timing for the NDIS. It was an alignment of planets in a way, and it was clear that it was going to be successful. I think, and let's not forget, this is before COVID. So as I said, we all had day jobs. We all had other stuff to do, and we were doing this at night and in our spare time. So we just put our head down, and as you know, once we're passionate about something, we just don't give up.
That's true.
But at the time, there wasn't a timeline. It was just, okay, we knew what the steps needed to be. One step, another step, another step. We knew that the money was critical. We knew that the registration was critical. We knew that the ACNC was critical. We knew that we wanted to be an NDIS registered provider pretty much at that time already. We knew that we needed a property, and we knew that we needed a bit of money to start. We knew the ingredients of the recipe. We just didn't know how to put them together in a way, even though we had the recipe sheet from Italy in a way that sort of made a big difference, because we could then knock on doors and say, look, this is the evidence.
Yeah, it works.
Add to that the Australian context, it's going to work even better.
Yeah.
And I think we've proven that we've just delivered. But it hasn't come without a lot of work, a lot of ache, a lot of mistakes, a lot of hurdles.
A lot of willingness to learn too from the mistakes. But can I also say, I think I was very lucky that that team of three that we were working with, Andrea, Alex and me, that Andrea and Alex, apart from having their Italian heritage in common, are both marathon runners.
That's right. Yeah, that's something
there
else.
for the long haul.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something else that brought us together. So yeah, and that helped.
And that long-term vision and goal, I think, was very important during the time when there was no money. And as you said, there was a lot of working late at night. We were also very lucky that some of the people who've been attracted to the project, I had met a man named John Ackery through the Sydney Leadership Program.
Yes.
John was general manager for Song Hotels, which are not a social enterprise, but I think a business for profit.
Yeah, it is another social enterprise. It's part of YWCA. Fantastic.
No, profit for purpose.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So yes, it's a social enterprise that is a profitable social enterprise, does a great job. They make money for YWCA, and we'll let John talk about it when he comes. We
were very lucky to get John because he had a long work history in Ridges Hotel Group, which I had also worked for years ago.
Yeah. So, he was the missing bit of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So John joined us, I think, on the 11th of October, which is tomorrow. Yes, as we're recording this, 11th of October 20. Yeah, well, I was sort of looking at some compliance lists and stuff yesterday. So, my day job. Yeah. Yes, he joined us basically 6 months after registration, and has been part of the board ever since. And then the board has now grown to a larger number. I think there's about 8 of us, and we are a very, very strong skills-based board, which has expertise in HR, in marketing, in compliance and governance, financial management, investment, property investment. It's a great board. Great board. It's a great fantastic
board. Yeah, from the outside might seem like a bit of overkill for a 15-bedroom hotel in Victoria, but this is not where we're going to stop, is it, Andrea?
That's right. So the vision is very big. We talked a little bit about the vision. Actually, probably haven't talked about it in the vision. We did it in the mock-up.
We did it in the mock-up, in the outtake.
And tell us what the vision is, Tracy. You tell us what the vision is for the hotel.
The vision is, amongst other things, to have a Hotel Etico in every state and territory in Australia. And by doing that, to change the employment prospects for people with disability, but also to normalise the employment of people with disability. So everybody walking into a hotel and seeing someone on the front desk, it's not going to be unusual or special or nice. It's just going to be someone doing their job.
So we made some reference in our previous episode without necessarily referring to it as a theory of change, but to our theory of change, which is not just limited to working with the individuals with disability and their families, but with all the guests and changing their perspectives and with all the employers and at a systemic level as well, because as I said, we had the initial evidence from Italy. We can now claim that we have evidence of the system working in Australia within the Australian context, and we're now ready to expand. We are practically actively looking for a second hotel and more around the country. We're looking on the east coast of Australia, anywhere between Brisbane and Melbourne and anything where in between. We're looking for a larger hotel, not just a 15-room hotel. We're looking for something between 40 and 80 rooms. And that's on the back of understanding better the viability of a larger scale of hotel compared to a small boutique hotel. But as you've often referred to it with me, like this is a little bit of the mothership in a way, or the initial root of the tree that we're growing. And in fact, talking about the tree, there's an important reference to the logo of the Italian Hotel Etico, because the logo of the Italian Etico is a persimmon tree, which is a symbol of resilience and perseverance and ability to survive on tough climate, and making this beautiful, bright, sweet fruit that are the persimmons that on the outside they look beautiful. Then you go and have a look at them. What is this thing? You don't know how to eat them. And then you you eat them and they're the sweetest thing on earth. And on the tree that is represented in the logo, there are 21 persimmons.
Which is a reference back to Down syndrome and trisomy 21. Yeah.
Correct. So because chromosome 21 is the one that is responsible for Down syndrome. And then there is an arrow at the bottom on the root. And the arrow that points down reference to the download method, which is the methodology that Chef Antonio developed in Italy to download the knowledge from the hospitality skills into the trainees that then sort of bring it away and develop their own independence. So yeah, that's a little bit of a history behind the logo and the tree. Yeah, we'll leave the history of our logo became for another episode.
Oh. Tracey, were you surprised when we emailed you to come on the podcast?
Yes. Knowing how much I love public speaking.
You're great at public speaking.
You're very good.
You're very good.
Natural.
Very natural, yeah. This isn't public speaking. It's just a conversation.
Yeah.
And so, Tracey, then going back to Saraya's question about me, I initially was a volunteer on the board and work, as I said, at night, and then work increased and increased and increased. In the meantime, I also moved jobs in my day jobs, and then COVID hit, and then we went in lockdown, and then we lost pieces along the way, and then Saraya came along, and you and I were sort of the forces behind sort of employing Saraya. And I was saying in the last episode that we pretty much fell in love with Saraya from the word go, right?
Yeah, we knew you were it.
You had the X factor,
vision and passion, and just that you just got it. You just got it straight away.
Yes.
That's really good to hear, because you two have the biggest poker faces I've ever seen in my life.
She was really scared about the interview.
You guys don't give away anything.
I'll make them sweat.
Yes. You did.
Well, I told Saraya and the rest of the public that, it was a very important role, and we knew that we couldn't stuff it up. We had to get it right first. It was very important. And so she started in November 2021.
Yeah.
And I was still a volunteer. And then, again, work increased. And then throughout 2022, I approached the board and said, look, I think the time has come for us.
It became very obvious to the board that that the hotel needed a full-time, a very specific full-time role. And it was also very obvious that was you. So,
and he was fantastic. He was done in a graduate
nuts and bolts of how we managed to do that. Yeah.
Yes, and the board was very mature about it, and in the end, come the 12 months from that, so November 2022, that's when I started officially as CEO. And
it was a lot of fun when Andrea wasn't here. I had a full year.
And it's been a great ride. So that's really thank you, Tracey, and the rest of the board for the trust. And again, the work hasn't become any easier, but it's now at least can be focused and we can.
And you're not working two full-time jobs, which was effectively.
No, at least it's just one full-time job. That's right. So yeah, that's really, really good. Anything else about Tracey that we needed to? Do we want to talk about a little bit about disability
employment? Yeah, I think we don't have long. The timer, I can see the timer is counting down. We do have a timer, but I think just for context, because we are going to go our next episode into industry and employment of people with a disability and breaking down the barriers. But just for a little bit of context, do you want to talk a little bit about the disability employment in Australia at the moment?
Yeah, sure. This is not a happy story. People with disability in Australia are far more likely to be either unemployed or underemployed than the general population by a significant amount. And
double the rate.
Yeah. And of that, people with intellectual disability are even more disadvantaged than other people with disability in terms of employment. And unfortunately, that hasn't shifted for over 30 years. Despite a lot of energy and thought going into why this is so, there has been a bit of a better uptake slight increase in the last couple of years. Not quite sure why. I think people are still looking at why. But what it's meant is it's much more than just a job and an income. It's by excluding a whole sector of society from the workforce, you're also excluding them from a lot of social interaction, from a lot of connection, from building that social capital in their communities, from even being an active part of their family. And you're diminishing their life and their quality of life by making a blanket decision before they've even arrived that they're not able to be employed, which is the traditional argument that people with intellectual disability aren't able to do things.
Hence the common realization that the Etico recipe was going to be successful, right? Because
that's why it was such an eye-opener. Because with the right training, yes, people with intellectual disability could learn. Even people with what you would call quite, I don't like to use the word severe, but people whose intellectual disability really hampered their functioning. Well, I'm thinking back to the film, Chef Antonio's Recipes for Revolution, and one of the participants or one of the employees at the hotel in Asti.
Niccolo.
Yeah, Niccolo, yeah. Who was very limited in his functionality, but during the training learned how to use kitchen knives and make pasta, and yeah, it was
one of the biggest misconceptions about employing somebody with a disability, that they can't use a knife or they can't be put in the thick of it.
Yeah, Antonio says that the first thing that he does, he puts a knife in the hands of the trainee, get him to type pasta.
I could hear all the parents gasp when they saw that in the film.
That's right.
Look, I'll tell you what my favourite one is when people walk into the bar at the hotel and they see someone with Down syndrome. I say Down syndrome because people wear it on their face. It's a very obvious disability. They see the barman has Down syndrome and they say, oh, are they allowed to do that? And you turn around and say, well, actually, they're over 18 and they have their RSA. So, yeah, they are allowed to do that.
They get it pretty much immediately when they start here, and they can't wait. And they send us messages saying, when am I getting my card? When am I getting my card?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a big step.
I think it's another misconception that people with a disability can't drink.
Oh,
so they can't drink. Of course they can. Again, they're over 18. But then when they see, so people with a disability can't drink, they can't have fun, they can't have a good time, which means, they can't be around alcohol, they can't work behind a bar, they don't know how to make a cocktail.
They remember people telling us, but you talk to them normally.
I've had that conversation so many times. Somebody said that to me once. I was like, what?
Yes, I know. But at the same time, you need to acknowledge that it's all about exposure. It's all
and there's that other thing that you hear often in the disability sector is you can't be it if you can't see it. And that's the same for people without disability. If you never see somebody with a disability doing something, how are you ever going to know they're going to do it?
Correct.
While there's been a lot of individuals with disability who have done exceptional things as individuals, there is a sort of, you've got to be aware of that tyranny of that narrative of the exceptional individual. Just as much as you have to be aware of the tyranny of low expectations, that someone with a disability can only be folding towels out the back window.
In fact, I mean, as bad as the word normal is, we are all about normalizing the situation. Right?
And that means normal expectations too. So not everyone with a disability is going to be, shaking cocktails like Tom Cruise, but they might be doing the best hospital corners you've seen on the hotel bed, or they're really, really good at greeting people.
And what about pay? What is your view about pay?
Okay. I think that you should get paid for the work you do. And I don't think that we should treat people with disability any differently to anybody else.
But how do you deal with the concept of productivity or lack of productivity?
Okay, well, I think that's a really interesting question, because how do you deal with productivity or lack of productivity with employees that don't have a disability? We have all worked with slackers. We all know those, and we've all worked with people who go above and beyond. But none of us are sitting there with our out ticking off whether they're, measuring them up on a scale of 1 to 10 and working out what the percentage is. So that, I think, is a really flawed approach to productivity and people with disability. I think a far better approach is the approach of reasonable adjustments. So what do you do in a workplace to ensure that this employee is as productive as they can be? I think you should do that for all your employees, actually. And that might be, okay, they can only work a 3-hour shift before they get tired and they start to slow down. So great, do a 3-hour shift.
That's right. So we spoke about last time about the fact that, our trainees are get paid from day one, full award wages, and that's an important element of our model. And I'm completely with you. Like in a number of recent presentations that I've made on panels and speeches with a hospitality industry, I've tried to sort of pitch to them that they need to reframe the concept of value, right? Because normally we associate in a normal business productivity and value, right? Instead, what the industry needs to do is to need to see value from a more holistic perspective and understand that the value that there is in employing a person with disability goes beyond the productivity of that individual person. It goes to the culture that changes internally in the organization because of the inclusion. It goes to the inclusion of guests. We have
experience shouldn't be underestimated there either.
That's right. And so there's if they and I can see a lot of nods in the room when I say it. And so there's that reframing, that reshifting of the conversation around value. I think things will start changing because it's not just about the widgets and how many things you produce in an amount of time, but it's about what the person brings to the business. So, yes, we made a decision very early on in the piece to pay people full award wages, and we've never looked back after
I
that.
think that's something we can be very proud of in terms of systemic change and modelling systemic change.
Very, very proud.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I think when we go and work with employers, our industry partners pay full award wage as well.
Yes, we don't partner with anyone that doesn't pay full award wages. So that's true.
Absolutely.
And on another level, that actually speaks to full inclusion of people with disability as well.
Of course.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget that someone that works on full award wages pays tax and gives back to the community and the taxpayer as a taxpayer like anybody else. So there's no question around that. So absolutely.
Before we wrap it up, I have one more question for you both. Is there anything you guys would do differently in the journey that we've had so far?
I'm sure there's plenty.
Yeah, look, I'm sure there's plenty too, but part of the joy of not doing things differently is that we have learnt rapidly and we have rapidly been able to adjust this model, not just for the Australian context, and for all the Italians out there, that does not mean just adding pineapple pieces, but we've actually been able to adjust it for our participants, our trainees and their families, and also in talking to industry. So we've been able to, whatever mistakes we've made have all fed into, the Etico machine to make it better and more fit for purpose. And I think that's the most important thing.
A couple of our founding values, pillars within the organization are learning from our mistakes and owning them and striving for continuous improvement.
Absolutely.
And so that's fundamental for us. And so that's how we roll. Probably wouldn't change anything. We would have done probably lots of things differently, but we wouldn't have learned as
much as
saying.
Tracey, a question just directed at you. Would you have hired me without a cover letter?
I think we did hire you without a cover letter.
No, I was made to submit.
And we pointed out the last time that she wrote a cover letter without the help of ChatGPT.
I did write a letter without
because it didn't
ChatGPT.
exist at the time. So I think she passed the test.
I'm going to take that as a yes. You would have hired me
most definitely
without a
cover letter. It's about the vibe.
There we go. It's the vibe. It is actually. I think you do get a gut feeling for people, especially in this space, in this industry. You get a feeling for people's passions. You get to really know
It's
them.
also about the willingness. I look back at some of the other hires we've made, and I think also it's about the willingness to grow. Because we're not Etico is not a project that stands still. It's not a service provider that is delivering
you go backward.
It is about growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And those that are not here necessarily anymore, it's probably because of that realization.
Or that they hit that ceiling or whatever. But it's
yeah, absolutely.
And I'm very much looking forward to our next location, our next community, the next lot of people that will be.
Yes, that's very exciting, very scary, but it will happen sooner rather than later. Okay, let's wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Do you have any last final words, anybody?
Tracy, thank you. My word count for the day.
Well, we appreciate you being our first guest.
Yes,
and
thank you
very much for having me.
We're a little bit surprised, but you knew that we would come up with a podcast eventually, I'm sure of it.
Yes, it's been a great pleasure, Tracy. I love working with you. I love having starting conversations with you that end up completely different place from where they were meant to start and go in the first place. It goes both ways.
And the ideas of it all that keep the adventure alive for sure.
We're also very excited for your next personal journey of being an empty nester, Franny leaving the home and getting married. So we'll be following along on that one.
All the best for the wedding, and looking forward to working with you for many, many more years to come.
Many.
So with this, thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Saraya. And let's make room for all.
And keep fighting for inclusion.
Love it.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.